pictures here. One is of a relay, a 4-prong relay that is open, and a 4-prong relay that is closed. So when you have an open relay, you have your coil side, and then you have your switch side. When it's open, you should be reading an out of limit on your DVON. As soon as you start running power through the coil side, what happens is the electricity generated within that coil turns it into an electromagnet, which snaps over your switch, so then you should not have any more than 100 millivolts reading through on your DVON. I'm going to do a tornado transition out of there. On a starter, all you got to do is hook it up to a battery. When you get it here, what you're going to do is you're going to ground it out to the body of the starter, which normally this would ground to the engine block or the transmission. Then you run your power wire over here to the main where the battery would go, your constant. And then what we're doing here is we're jumping this little wire across over, and we're going to tap it on the S terminal, which would be our signal wire, which would then activate the solenoid. It should push out the actuator rod, which brings the gear out that would meet the flywheel, or in an automatic transmission, it would just spin your flex plate to start the engine. So as you see here, the gear comes out, and the starter spins at the same time. And then it goes back in when you remove it. So we have laid out here the multiple components of a alternator. Starting from the outside working in, we have the cooling fan that attaches to the shaft where the pulley is. The front casing of the alternator also has a bearing in there. Moving over, we have the stator. It's coiled wire, copper wire in here. Right here we have the rotor with the slip rings on the front here. Inside here, this is underneath all of everything that I've talked about so far. You have your voltage regulator, which is this little arm across the back here. The rectifier bridge with 3 diodes inside here. And then right here, letter D, we've got our brushes in there. All right, so the basic operation on how a alternator works. Essentially, the computer, the ECU, sends a signal through the voltage regulator here. That signal is then sent through the brushes into the slip rings, which generates a field, an electromagnetic field around the rotor. When that happens, that rotor is spinning inside these coils here, and inside, it's called the stator, inside this coiled wire, as electromagnetic energy passes through copper wire, it tends to generate electricity. When that happens, the electricity is then sent through these 3 leads here on the bottom, which connect to the 3 diodes on the rectifier bridge. And what this does is it converts AC energy into DC energy. Now, after it converts AC to DC, basically what it's doing is it's doing 2 things at that point. It is charging the battery in the car and then providing electricity to all the other electrical components in the vehicle. What we have here, this is an oscilloscope. We use this to test the alternator. Right now we're doing a ripple test. What we look for when we're looking at a ripple test on an oscilloscope, basically this is an analog visual representation of the electrical current coming through here. So what we're looking for is, you'll see we've got these spikes that are consistent on one side and the other. Being that they're consistent, they're always there. Now we would compare this to a graph that we would get that would be the standard for this specific alternator, and if we found anything that was a little bit out of the ordinary, we would know that this alternator has something wrong with it. Things that you would look for would be spikes more towards the center here as opposed to on the outsides. Now these spikes could lead to bad diodes, which is mainly why we would use the oscilloscope to test an alternator. And the way that we have it set up, we've got it set up to the ground on the battery, the negative terminal, and then down here, let me get a light on it for you, we've actually got it hooked up to the positive terminal, or excuse me, where the cable from the battery positive terminal runs to the alternator. To do a ripple test with your voltmeter, what you need to do is you need to set it in volts. Go ahead and set it to AC, which you can kind of see. There's a little bit of a glare there. Hold on. There you go. AC. And then what we do is we have it connected to the negative terminal on the battery, and we go down and we touch that B terminal on the alternator as well. And you'll see that you'll get a reading off of that in volts. Sorry, I keep slipping off of it here. You can notice a fluctuation. So next we're going to be doing the voltage drop across the negative battery cable. So we're going to go ahead and we have one of our leads right here on the negative terminal of the battery. And then we're going to take our other lead and we're going to touch the casing of the alternator down here. And we should get a drop in millivolts. See right here we've got 25 millivolts. The voltage drop across the positive battery cable down to the alternator. We've got one of our leads connected over here to the positive battery terminal. And then we'll go down here, we're going to go ahead and put it on the B terminal on the alternator. It's hard because it's jumping around, so. And as you'll see right here, we've got a 45 millivolt drop as well. Go ahead and turn it and start. Go up just over 200. And as you can see, it didn't drop past 9.6. Alright, so we're going to do an open voltage test. The purpose of that is to basically see what your battery voltage is reading at, isolated and disconnected from the entire charging system. So once you have the terminals connected, all you're going to do is come over here, put your constant on the ground and your positive lead on the positive terminal. As you can see, we're getting an 8.61 volt reading. This battery is a little weak. We're going to have to charge it up to do some of the rest of the tests we have today. We're doing a voltage drop test across the battery cable that runs from the battery down to the starter. So let me get in here. It's a little bit hard to get to on this Honda. So you have to get in there. What you're trying to get it on is the same battery wire that runs from the starter to the battery, which is that one with the plastic cover on it. So give me 1 second here. Right here.
You want to get a 14 to be safe? Bro, our Honda's like usually 13 or 12.
As you saw there, it was a few hundred millivolt drop. As long as it doesn't go over 500 across that thick wire, it's a good rule of thumb, and we know that that wire is still good. Alright, so what we're doing here, I'm already arm deep in it because I found a good position for it, but we are checking the voltage drop across the negative post of the battery terminal to the casing on the starter down in there. Basically, we're looking for no more than 500 millivolts. As you can see right now, when the car is not cranking, it's jumping back and forth between 50 and 40 millivolts. Now we're going to go ahead and start it up. And as you can see right there, it did jump up. If we did a little bit longer, it probably would have shot up to 1 volt and then back down to 300 millivolts. As you saw right there, it went down to 129 millivolts.
I like to sing,